Hey guys, what's going on? Paul here. Welcome back to another Cardano video. Today I'm sitting down with someone who has been on the channel for a while, Pi from Sundaeswap. Great to have you back on, Pi, and congratulations on launching V2 of the DEX and yesterday, actually.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's like you said, it's been a while. I reached out and I said, hey, why don't we have me on the channel? And I'm excited to be here. I always enjoy chatting with you.
Nice, yeah, likewise. It's great to have you back on, and you will be on our live stream this week. We're recording the same day as the live stream. I'm not sure if I'll get this video out before it, but looking forward to that as well. Open discussion on all things Cardano and where we sit right now. But this one, let's dive into what has happened with Sundaeswap. For some people, they will have thought Sundaeswap disappeared over the last months, and now you've come out with V2, which, looking around the community, is getting a lot of really good responses.
Yeah, so we launched January of last year, and it was pretty rough. It was an anticipated rough. We were one of the most anticipated crypto launches that year, and maybe, arguably ever, right? There was an intense amount of excitement for our project, an intense amount of pressure, and an intense amount of load, and we kind of really put the chain through its paces. There's certainly some things that we could have done better through our launch, and there's some things that were unavoidable, right? After our launch, there was kind of two things that happened. One, that rough launch kind of really took a toll on the team for a while, and our morale kind of took a hit. Obviously we're still here and we pulled through it, but that impacted our productivity a lot. But combined with, in order to get to that launch, we pushed really hard and we accepted a lot of technical debt into the V1 UI that made it really difficult to iterate on that UI after our launch. There were several features that we tried to build, and it was kind of playing whack-a-mole with the bugs that it would introduce, right? So some people remember we said, oh yeah, charts will come out pretty soon, and we actually had a version of the V1 UI with charts enabled, but it just was such a buggy experience that we weren't really comfortable releasing that. The buy, sell, swap kind of split that you see in the V2 UI now, we implemented that for the V1 UI, and again, it was just whack-a-mole trying to fix those bugs. So eventually we said, okay, what do we need to do to resolve this so that we can start delivering iteratively again? And we settled on it would just be too big of an effort to try to iteratively fix some of this technical debt. And so we said, let's do a rewrite and let's invest a lot in the foundations of the code base. Set everything up as a UI toolkit. So there's all these modular components that we can use. Really invest in how we manage state so that we have just a really clean state abstraction that the whole website uses. Things like this that, if you're non-technical, won't mean much to you, but we really invested in the foundations of that UI. And at the time we thought, okay, this should be done, end of August, early September. Maybe we can go live late September. Because in our minds, the bulk of the hard work was done because we could just copy logic for calculating how the transaction should go and things like that from the V1 UI to the V2 UI. And it turns out that wasn't the hard part. That's not what took a lot of time. It was really that laying that foundation. So this, we launched our V2 UI yesterday. We launched it on testnet a couple weeks ago. And already we're seeing that it paid off, right? So while I'm as unhappy as anyone with the timeline that it took to get us here, I'm really happy with our final product. And even between our launch on the testnet and our launch yesterday, we were able to fix so many bugs, add some new features, tweak the UX based on user feedback much faster and more iteratively than we ever were with V1, right? The devs used to dread going into the V1 code base, and they're just having the time of their lives now. So, from the core DEX itself, that's why we've been quiet, is because we've been focusing on this V2 rewrite. Took us longer than we expected, but it's out now, and we're really excited. And it seems like the community is really excited about it too. But we haven't been absent. We haven't been gone from the community. We released our governance solution, and that's being used by a number of different projects throughout Cardano to kind of host votes from their community. We launched the rewards features, which we're using for the ISO and reverse ISO feature. But we're also, offering to other projects in the Cardano ecosystem right now, Indigo and Liquid. If there's any other projects that are looking to have kind of a seamless token distribution, feel free to reach out to us. Most people go through drip drops, and that's great. We love drip drops. But if they don't work for you for some reason or whatever, we're happy to have a chat with you. The same technology can be used for distributing like team and investor tokens on a vesting schedule with kind of a really nice UX. So feel free to reach out to us about that or governance. Obviously we did a bunch of R&D in parallel on Hydra. And maybe we could talk a bit about that later in the show. So we did some R&D on Hydra and some other technologies. So we haven't been sitting on our asses, so to speak. But we have been really, particularly quiet when it comes to the community because partly, we needed a break after that launch, but partly we were heads down, really focused on getting this out the door.
Yeah, I can imagine that was extremely stressful getting the launch out. There was a lot of expectation on it. I knew from talking to you that the chain wasn't going to be ready, but I don't think anyone expected the volume that actually tried to use it on day one. Like, we knew things were going to be slow and there was going to be bugs, but not to that degree of users just trying to pile in. I think we were on a live stream on Big Pay's channel at the time of launch, and it was just crazy, the number of people that were trying to use it. And I think a lot of Cardano learned on things that needed to be improved fairly quickly for dApps to launch. And other dApps learned from that experience as well, of watching Eli launch and watching the feedback. I think even on how the community reacted to certain things, lots of dApps were able to learn from Yi pioneering that. Wasn't so good for Yi at the time. I'm sure your support desk was flooded with questions, and lots of people were new as well coming into DEXs and DeFi at that point, people who had come into crypto into Cardano, and that's all they knew. So we didn't have that type of a dApp before. But
yeah, for sure. And just to put it in perspective, I think for the like hour of our launch, we had I don't remember the exact statistics, but like millions of requests per second, right? Which, something like Microsoft or Amazon or whatever can deal with that load like no problem. And our infrastructure dealt with it no problem. But it was the first time Cardano had ever seen that kind of load, right? In terms of transactions on chain. And, using the same model that other dApps are now using, this batching model with the scoopers, we were seeing queue times of 9 days, right? And yes, we've bumped the protocol parameters some since then, and so that's helped. But just the amount of interest and volume was really kind of our undoing at the time, in some respect. That being said, I think we've bounced back really well, and we've got some really exciting things planned, both in the near future. So in the blog post we released yesterday, we kind of highlighted some of the cool features that we plan to follow up with. Things like, I forget which ones we mentioned, but things like showing the order book where you can see the open kind of depth at different prices. And
actually, I'm going to stop you there. I'm going to bring up the DEX.
Yeah, sure.
What it looks like now, just for people who mightn't have seen it yet, and you can talk through different parts of it and what's
but the point I was making is just, we announced a couple of things that we're going to follow up with, but we've also got some really exciting long-term plans in terms of where does the protocol go in terms of, this is all built on the same smart contracts. What features do we get if we rebuild those smart contracts and tie in scalability solutions like Hydra or some of the other things that we've been looking at? Why don't you, kind of click around and explore the site, and, you can ask questions, or I can point out interesting things that that we support.
Yeah, sure. So for anyone who hasn't seen it, this is the new version. This is the homepage, and I like this feature where when you come in first, you have your assets. So it basically shows your portfolio. You have your full assets here, and then your liquidity. I'd actually forgot this is an old test wallet, and when I loaded it up, I seen that I had provided liquidity at one point, which I forgot about. But if you look at the amount, it doesn't really mean much. But I like that you can come in and get a good overview fairly quickly of what's going on. Zap, this is something that will be coming down the line as well, is it?
Yeah, it's something that internally is working. There was just some UI bugs. We were hoping to launch with that, but had to cut the ribbon somewhere and say, let's just get it out the door and then follow up with this. But yeah, we've executed a bunch of zaps on the testnet, and it works great. I can talk a bit about, so there's this feature is zaps, and then we have a feature that may come sometime in the future called native zaps that I can talk about if you'd like, if you're interested in that.
Yeah, go for it. Actually, just to explain what zap is first.
Yeah, so a zap, we talked about this before our launch. At the time, we didn't have a cool name for it. It was called single-sided liquidity. But the idea is to allow you to provide liquidity to a pool, right? Just like you did with, if you go to the liquidity provided tab for ADA WMT, provide liquidity to the pool, but with only one token, right? So say you grabbed a bunch of Sunday from your ISO rewards and you just want to, drop it in the liquidity pool. You can deposit that without having to find the ADA to match with it. We talked about that before our launch. We called it single-sided liquidity. After we launched, MinSwap saw us talk about that or came up with the idea on their own. I'm not sure which, but and I think there's other products over in Ethereum that offer this, and they had the great term Zap. So MinSwap adopted that term, and so we're kind of just following that trend because it's a really catchy way to just say, oh, I'm just zapping in my liquidity. This initial version we're calling Zaps because the single-sided liquidity deposits or Zaps are built into the protocol. And we have, it's kind of one of those things. It's like one of the, you're juggling a lot of balls going to launch, and sometimes you drop one or two of those, right? So we have that feature in the smart contracts, and we have a bunch of tests around them. But the problem is we did not notice necessarily how close to the execution budget they were. So if you try to execute a Zap on a small pool with like 100 million of each token, with not counting decimal places, it works fine. But if you put in realistic values from normal pairs, like you add 6 decimal places to that, it exceeds the execution units. And so right now, with the current protocol parameter settings, we cannot execute Zaps. Hopefully, we see in the future the protocol gets optimized, like Cardano itself, and they can raise those protocol parameters, and then we can offer native Zaps, right, which is a single transaction, a single scoop. So we said, crap, this is a really important feature. How do we implement this? And we came up with, so we're calling that, the one that's built into the smart contracts, native Zaps, and that may come in the future. But the way that we implemented it here is one feature of our smart contracts is when you lock up your funds for an order, you specify a destination. Now, most of the time, that's just your own wallet, right? So you say, once you've executed this, you have to pay the funds back to me, to my wallet. But there's that destination can be set to a smart contract and a datum, which means that you can chain this transaction, like a swap or a deposit, into other transactions. So you can say, I want to, for example, swap half of my Sunday for ADA, and then instead of depositing those results back into my wallet, where I then have to go and deposit that liquidity, I'm going to deposit those funds into a deposit order. And so then that will execute and give you back the liquidity tokens. So it's using that chained transactions feature that that we have to kind of emulate the native zaps. So we call it zaps. And because of that, you have to pay the scooper fee twice. So zaps are going to cost 5 ADA instead of the 2.5 ADA. Maybe that will change as, if and when the DAO votes to adjust scooper fees. And then when the protocol parameters get bumped, we'll see native zaps, which will be cheaper.
Okay. Yeah, governance we're going to get on to, and I think that'll definitely be one of the votes that will come up there on fees and different things and what happens with fees. We'll come to that in a few minutes. We'll finish going through the DEX first. So one thing that I think is good for new people coming in is when you go to exchange, it will click with people more that I want to buy an asset or I want to sell an asset rather than swap assets. So if I come in and I want to buy something, I get the list of the assets, so whatever ones I want to buy. So let's say WMT I want to buy, and then this is all new here. The layout, these are the charts, what's going on with TVL. So I suppose since it's new, is that we're not seeing TVL just yet?
Yeah, I mean, those should be showing up. I'll take a look into why that's not being fetched, but and we're sourcing that information from C Explorer. So that's my personal favorite blockchain explorer these days, and they have great APIs for. So these statistics will actually be an aggregate across multiple DEXs, and then as we flesh out and improve this UI, we'll like differentiate. Okay, here's the ecosystem-wide TVL for this pair, and then here's our DEX's information about the TVL and things like that. So. That's just one of the things that didn't quite make the cut. We had to cut the ribbon somewhere, but we plan to flesh this out with more interesting statistics, more interesting charts, things like that.
Yeah, that would be nice to see. It'd be compare and contrast the different TVLs across the network, and with more and more DEXs and ways for people to trade, things like that would be interesting to get a better picture of where certain tokens sit. For me, I really like tap tools. People on the channel here will have seen me show that multiple times. It's a great place for aggregating data, and C Explorer as well. But down here, token information. So this is if people want to make sure that they are trading the right token on the policy ID to make sure it is the one that they're trying to buy. For some of the bigger tokens, it's not just a worry, or not such a worry. But if you're trading some newer tokens, it's always good just to verify that the one you're trying to buy, especially early, is the real token. So people come in, then they can buy. It's fairly straightforward, I think, for people that you want to buy WMT and you're going to pay with ADA. Will there be options to pay with other tokens? So would that come under swap then, or?
Yeah, right now and I'll talk a bit about in a second about buy, sell, swap, because that's a really interesting discussion. So right now, if you want to swap with a different token, that pair has to exist. Somebody has to be providing liquidity in that pair. But then you would be able to select that other token. In your wallet, you don't have any other tokens, so but you'd be able to select any token that you have in your wallet. So let's talk a bit about the buy sell swap thing. So one kind of common theme in some of our discussions shortly after launch was people new to DeFi were getting really hung up on this concept of a swap, that it was not intuitive for them. And they didn't know which, direction they wanted. And it was hard, what we realized is that if you look at any other kind of classical finance exchange, it's always in terms of buying a token or selling a token, right? You look at Coinbase, you look at Binance, things like that. And then you're just paying in some asset, right? And then there's advanced views that may be more similar to the swap. And so what we wanted to do was build the UI around that buy sell swap or buy sell experience. But the worry was that the people who are now familiar with DeFi and are used to, I want to swap tokens, would have to adapt to this new workflow. So for now, we have all three. That being said, we have a new product manager, and he's a very research focused and evidence-based product manager. And so really what we're doing is we're testing a hypothesis, right? We're going to be interviewing a lot of people who it's their first time using the DEX. They've been using DEXs for 20 years. and see how is this experience actually impacting people's workflow, and is it creating friction or alleviating friction, right? And so then we will follow the evidence wherever it takes us, and maybe you'll see us get rid of the buy sell swap and simplify down to a trade interface. Maybe you'll see us say, okay, well, buy sell is enough for people, and we'll get rid of swap. We're happy to follow the evidence. We're not attached to any particular solution. This is us kind of just testing a hypothesis.
Okay. Yeah, I think for me, I think it will be a winner having the simple interface. And then for people who are more familiar, you can just go straight to swap if you want. But I think the buy and sell will make more sense to people coming in new to the space. On the charts, then, will you be putting in bar charts, or lots of people are familiar with, I suppose, TradingView, and people integrate TradingView? Will that be on the cards at any point?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, we're focused on getting something to, a usable state where, we didn't want to release something that was a significant downgrade, even if the UX was better, like from a feature standpoint compared to V1. So we wanted to reach feature parity. Then after it having taken so long, we didn't want to release something that was just pure feature parity with V1, because, we were worried about people saying, well, that's it. So we did add some new features. For example, we support limit orders and things like that. So if you go to buy, you can switch that to a limit order, and then you can fill in the price that you want to pay, and it will execute when it reaches and can satisfy that price. But one of those things that didn't make the cut that we're definitely planning to improve is these charts. And there's some good TradingView libraries out there that make it easy. So hopefully we'll be able to do that pretty quickly. But yeah, you should be able to see candlestick charts and graph your own support lines and things like that once we implement that.
Nice. Yeah, it is a nice clean layout. I'm not picking holes or anything like that. Just asking questions that I see posted around. But so that's really, it's that straightforward. Your buy, sell, and your swap. Liquidity, then, this is for people coming in if they want to provide liquidity to the different pools. And we won't go into how it all works and everything here. That's for another video. This is just to show how it works. So again, nice clean layout.
Yeah, and again, those stats aren't showing up, but that's one of the tickets on our backlog to investigate why that is.
Okay, so you can see then the total value locked, but you can see the tokens that I have sitting in my wallet. Then I can add liquidity. So I have some Sunday and ADA, so I could add liquidity here. Or you can see the position that I already have. I can view the other ones I can't, because obviously I don't have them tokens just yet. And then the rest of the
one feature on this page that's kind of flying under the radar that we're trying to figure out a better way to surface. If you actually hover over the logos for the tokens, you can see the kind of metadata that's registered with it, and then you can just swap it directly from there.
I hadn't actually noticed that one yet. Nice. So then manage. That just brings me back to the home page where I have my pair here that I can do whatever I want with my liquidity.
Yeah, and then
whether I pull it out.
We didn't talk about this earlier, but really the star of the show for us, the thing that was the trickiest engineering-wise, other than laying the groundwork for this UI toolkit, the single feature that was the trickiest is this earned fees column. So if you're providing liquidity, you are earning a trade, like a small portion of every trade that happens against that pool. And up till now, I think on most DEXs, you have to calculate that yourself, or the DEX will just estimate it for you, right? I remember on Uniswap, they just estimate the fees based on the daily volume and your portion shared. But this is actually a very, very precise calculation that takes into account effectively every trade. Hold on one second. Takes into account every trade, and on the surface that's pretty easy to calculate. What you do is you take the amount that you deposited, you calculate if this was a 0% fee pool that was just preserving the product of those two tokens, here's the balance that I would have today, right? So you say, it's solving a system of linear equations, but you get a value of like, okay, at today's price, here's what my two balances would be. And then you compare that to your actual balance, and whatever that difference is the fees that you've earned. So on its surface, we've known how to calculate this for a while, and we would walk people through that who opened support tickets, showing them, okay, here's how you calculate it. The thing that made it difficult was you have to know what you deposited. And if I just have LP tokens in the wallet, I don't know like what that represents as a deposit, right? Because you could have transferred those LP tokens between wallets. You could deposit multiple times and throw those LP tokens into the same bucket. You could split that arbitrarily, and so it was a really kind of complicated engineering challenge to be able to associate a bucket of LP tokens to the different times that those tokens were minted and how much of them are still remaining, right? So this is calculating your fees. And then, you haven't earned much because it's a very small deposit, like you said, just for testing. But if you go to withdraw that liquidity, so click on actions and click remove liquidity. And you pick, like, say, 50%. And you click withdraw liquidity. Down here, down at the bottom, we actually show you the estimated fees that you're withdrawing. So at the time that you withdraw, we say, okay, here's the fees that you've earned, right? If you withdraw 50%, you're withdrawing potentially 50% of your fees. That could vary because maybe you're withdrawing from like LP tokens that have earned a lot more fees than the rest in your wallet. So maybe you're withdrawing 75% or whatever. And then it shows you the breakdown of those tokens. So that will give you a good sense of like, what am I getting? What did I get out of providing liquidity to this pool?
Okay. And I suppose for people who are trying to keep track of every little trade, and that this is a handy feature to have. But even people who are trying to optimize where they're earning fees or where they want to be providing their liquidity, these types of things will be very useful for that. So that's kind of liquidity covered. Create pool, just for people who are looking to create liquidity pools, provide liquidity, withdraw. So we've shown the withdraw, provide liquidity then. So this will be, I could do it for ADA Sunday or ADA WMT because they're the main tokens I have. Actually, I could do it here, ADA NTX either. These are just the ones that are sitting in my wallet. But for any tokens that are in your wallet, I presume they would come up here and I could provide liquidity like that.
Yep.
So that's kind of it on the UI. Orders, I should have put through some orders on this before on the new UI, but I forgot to do that. I lost the track of time just before the call. But this is where people would see their previous orders if they had any on it. So that's kind of it for the UI, is it?
Yeah, there's a bunch of little features kind of embedded throughout. So, we have ADA handle integration. We've got, limit orders and lots of little improvements, some improvements on the orders page. You can filter by status, so you can see the ones that are opened, canceled, etc. But, really excited most of all for where we go from here, right? Which is now that we have this foundation to work from, this really clean code base, how do we iterate on and deliver features, more often than once a year?
Yeah, I suppose that's the question that's coming up next is what is next for Sundaeswap? So we mentioned about the governance there a few times. Yield farming is another thing that right now, I know there's one or two farms where the actual token, you can get rewards in the token, but for yield farming like we had when Sundaeswap launched, will that come back, or how will that come back?
Yeah, so ultimately that's up to the community, right? Because when we launched, we realized that launching without any kind of yield farming was very risky business, right? Because you want to attract people to use the DEX. And that put us in a tricky position because we had to make a decision about what to do with community tokens. And that left us very uncomfortable. And so what we did is we limited it to 6 months. and a fixed percentage. Because we were pre-launch, we still felt that we were still shepherds of the technology, and we could do that. But when the program expired, we did not feel comfortable just saying, okay, well, we're just going to renew it and continue emitting tokens, because at the end of the day, the tokens in the community treasury, the DAO treasury, are for the community, right? And at the time, we didn't have governance up and running, and so there was no way for us to solicit that input from the community. Governance launched a little while back. Nobody's brought forth their own proposal, so we're going to be bringing forth. The plan is today we're kind of just waiting on a final sign-off on some of the language from our legal department for the proposal that we plan to make. But ultimately, the details of that proposal, the exact settings of how much to emit and things like that, are going to be up to the community. And so first it'll start as a discussion on our governance forum. Then it will kind of go to a temperature check once we feel like we've pinned down a community consensus on what those are. And then finally an on-chain / off-chain using our governance portal vote, where it's verifiable on-chain using kind of the Merkle tree technology that we built and have talked about elsewhere. But ultimately, whether we have yield farming and what those thresholds are will be up to the community. And that's what your Sunday tokens are for, is so that you have a voice in that decision.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what comes into governance, the types of suggestions that can come in there. And that's open to anyone in the community that holds Sunday tokens, that they can come in, and is there that they can actually put something forward as a suggestion, or that then they can vote on?
Our first vote was to ratify kind of a set of rules and procedures. So we the way that it works for now, and this can be updated via DAO vote, is you start a temperature check on the forum. So we have a governance forum that you can go and create an account. You create a temperature check. Once that has received 20 people interested in it, so it's a little bit different from like a vote where we say, oh, if you've received more yeses than nos, we ignore the nos, because the goal here is not to say, should we do this or not? The goal is, should we have a vote on this, right? And so it's once there's enough people that are interested, currently that threshold is 20 people. So once 20 people have said, yeah, I'm interested in seeing that be voted on, it goes, and you can go and create a proposal for it on chain. Right now we have like a very kind of minimal threshold, 10,000 Sunday, which was I think twice the average wallet balance at the time, just to kind of cut down on spammers and stuff like that. But if you don't have that much Sunday, it should be pretty easy to find somebody who can kind of sponsor your bill, so to speak, your proposal, and create it for you. And that, then people vote on it. We'll post about it in our Discord so that people can see it and go vote. And then we'll all see the outcome, and then it'll be so right now it's not like a fully autonomous decentralized system, but for example, a proposal could be, here is what we want the future of yield farming on Sunday to be, and we want Sundaeswap Labs, the company, to build it, right? Or it could be, we want to adjust the scooper fee up or down, and here's what we want that scooper fee to be allocated to. And the temperature check is really there to make sure there's good discussion on both sides of the topic before it gets voted on. Because, for example, a lot of people just think, oh, I want to just drop the scooper fees. And what that's going to do is it's going to further centralize the protocol, because there's going to be less scoopers who are willing to operate because they're going to be getting paid less. And so you'll have fewer, right now we have what I think is a good threshold of 29, 30 scoopers. If you drop the fees too much, that's going to drop down to 5, or, I'm sure there will always be a scooper who's, willing to do it so long as they're not losing money. But it really impacts the decentralization of the protocol. And some people want to raise it, but on the other side of things, if you raise it, that's going to kind of drive volume away from the protocol. as people aren't willing to pay that much, right? So it's a really, complicated, nuanced topic, as most things in governance are. And so we want that discussion to happen first so that when you're voting, you can be an informed voter.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely see some interesting discussions there. Like you see some suggestions across other platforms where you take some of the fees that are earned. You could take some of what the scooper fee is there, take 0.5 ADA from every scoop and put it into a pot that buys back Sunday tokens, or that goes back to providing more liquidity into the Sunday ADA pair on the DEX, or things like that. We see MinSwap do something similar to that with I think they call it the fee switch. So I'm sure there'll be lots of interesting ways there, and yield farming will definitely be, well, if you're putting it in, I think it'll definitely be an interesting one that people will want to see added back. And I have a feeling that the 30 days mightn't be what people go for this time. They're getting used to having yield farming rewards more often at this point.
Yeah.
But in terms of, we touched on Hydra earlier on as well. So there's lots of talk about Hydra and what it will do, and ye were doing R&D into it for the DEX. Can you kind of touch on Hydra for people that mightn't have heard on it? And
just while I'm talking, do you want to pull up that demo that we had last year?
Yeah.
So we did a bunch of R&D into Hydra to kind of investigate, is this kind of the right scalability solution for us? And we released a demo at Rare Bloom last year that Paul's pulling up, showing kind of the potential for Hydra on dApps. One thing I tried to stress at the time that some people missed, but that I'll stress again here, is that that really was an R&D effort. It wasn't close to being productized. It was really just showing kind of the benefits of Hydra in terms of speed. So you can see, basically as fast as I can click this swap button, the swaps go through. And so this was a demo to show, one, that speed, and two, the ease of use of porting your dApp over to Hydra because of that isomorphic property, which means the smart contracts that we wrote for the mainnet launch just ported over, right? And then the way that we wired up this UI so quickly is we used a community tool called Ogmios, and we just built a something that pretended to be Ogmios, but for Hydra. And so we could then, all of our existing infrastructure for tracking orders and presenting a UI and things like that could just listen to what it thought was Ogmios, but was actually, backed by Hydra, right? So it's like a different backend for the same operations, right? And so that was really what it was showing off, is that developing on Cardano and developing on Hydra are very, very seamless and similar. What isn't here, though, is something that's ready to go to production, right? And there's like, Hydra has this kind of reputation maybe for being this be-all, end-all scalability solution, which, don't get me wrong, Hydra is great, and for the use cases that it works for, it will be fantastic. It'll like blow people away. But there's kind of a fundamental thing, at least in stock Hydra, the kind of core, bare, unmodified Hydra protocol, which is, at the end of the day, there's some number of participants, right, that have to sign every transaction in order for that transaction to get adopted. And the vision is that this is like 5, 10, maybe 30 people, not thousands. Because if you have thousands of people who all have to sign every transaction, you're slow again, right? You like, that's just what Cardano is in effect, right? It doesn't actually work that way, but in a sense, every stake pool operator is validating every block, right? And if you have 30 people and the only money that's being transacted within the Hydra head is their money, right? Money from those 30 people, then you have really, really strong security guarantees, because the only hack that can happen is that they can unanimously agree to steal their own money, right? They can sign some snapshot that says, okay, this one person's going to run away with all the money, but it's, they all have to agree and it's all their own money, right? once you start talking about something like a DEX, now you have everybody else's money. And so now you have 30 people who aren't running away, who, like, if they conspire, aren't running away with their own money. They're running away with $10 million of the community's money. So as is, Hydra is not a really great solution for something like a DEX or things like that. It's a really great solution for, maybe Paul and I trade back and forth, thousands of times per day because we run a business together, or, we're trading lunch money that often or something. And it's a really great use case as a primitive, as a building block for other protocols. And so what we're working on very long-term is a protocol called Gummy Worm, which we think will utilize Hydra as the execution layer so that we can build dApps on top of Hydra as an execution layer, but that the custody of funds is managed differently than Hydra. And that's going to be a fairly long R&D effort. We put it, we finished up that demo. We did a little bit more work into like October, November. Then we put it to the side to really push on getting the V2 over the finish line, because it started to become really apparent, wow, this is taking a lot longer than we expected. And but long term, we expect Hydra to be a really important part of our roadmap. But we're not launching Hydra Sundaeswap tomorrow or anything like that.
Okay, and just from my own knowledge, can a smart contract be one of the participants in a Hydra head? So if the funds, so worst case then, if it's agreed to take the funds back out to a smart contract, they're still assigned to, it goes to the contract, not to one individual user.
So just given the language you use, can a smart contract be the participant of a head? No, because it would have to produce signatures for each of those transactions. That being said, you can take the Hydra protocol and modify it and say, okay, we're going to take the smart contract that is holding all the funds and modify that smart contract so that it has that constraint that you outlined. So for example, I talked with the Hydra team about this as like kind of an add-on system where you can introduce additional constraints that say, okay, most of the assets in this pool are borrowed from this smart contract. And so make sure that no more than 10%, that make sure that the funds that are paid back to the smart contract are no more than 10% of what the initial balance was, right? So you can constrain the risk in that way. And that's indeed one of the avenues we're exploring. I'm not committing ourselves to any particular design, but that's one of the things that we're considering very carefully in the design of Gummy Worm and the next version of the Sundaeswap smart contracts.
Okay, and anything else coming down the line for Sundaeswap? I see we're getting on a bit in time, but anything we've missed here, or anything you want to cover?
I mean, there's a lot. There's some really cool features coming to the UI, things like showing like an order book, advanced charting. I forget which other ones I mentioned in that blog post, but so I may be leaking some alpha here. But
yeah, I'll share the blog post down below anyway for people, they can go and read it.
But another thing is like expiration on orders, so that it cancels after a certain period of time if it doesn't execute. Could be a thing that we implement, and that's going to be really directed by our conversations with our community and that kind of user research. And then there's some really exciting things that are cooking that I can't talk about yet. So there's a little bit of a teaser for you.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I just found the article there. I will share that one down below for people who want to go forward as well. I can see Zaps updating orders, the UI order book, the advanced charting, a few things we'd actually mentioned throughout the call here too. But look, thanks very much for your time. I appreciate it. Appreciate getting the walkthrough and the updates. It's great to see what is there, and that we're going to be seeing more regular updates going forward from Sundaeswap. You mentioned,
thanks for having me on. It's always great to talk to you, and I'll see you on that live show this afternoon.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And for people who want to reach out, you were saying for projects, and that is there set ways they should reach out to you for governance or the token distribution?
Yeah, the best way is contact@sundaeswap.finance. We get a lot of emails there, so sometimes we can be kind of slow in responding, or So, apologies for that, but that's the best way to reach us, or, open a support ticket in our Discord channel and we can chat with you there.
Great. And just want to mention token distribution. I still get a few questions on the rewards. So the ISO and the reverse ISO rewards, is there an end date on when people can claim them?
Yeah, so rewards are available at iso.sundaeswap.finance. That's both the original ISO rewards and the reverse ISO rewards. And actually, our first community started vote, Vidi, one of our community managers, started a vote to end the program and kind of put an expiration date on them so that they revert back to the treasury as November 30th of this year. So, a good chunk of time for people to claim. And that passed. So it was exciting to see somebody from our community actually submit a vote.
Yep, and I'll leave the link for that down below as well for anyone who hasn't claimed them. But I think that's a good enough time period for people to be able to get in and claim them. Pi, thanks very much. I appreciate it. Anyone here thinks this is worth watching for others, please do share it out. Let them know what's going on with Sundaeswap. Leave questions down below, and I will talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much.